Tom Miller had been working on the Harmony Research Station for 6 months, but he still felt like a newcomer every single day. The massive space station floated in the neutral zone between human and Varan territories, serving as a bridge between two very different civilizations. Tom often wondered how he had gotten so lucky to be chosen as one of only 12 human cultural liaisons stationed there. The morning started like any other. Tom made his way through the curved corridors of the station, passing by the large viewing windows that showed the endless expanse of space dotted with distant stars. The artificial gravity hummed beneath his feet, and the recycled air carried the faint scent of the hydroponic gardens maintained by the Viren crew members. Tom's job was simple in theory, but complex in practice. He helped facilitate communication between human and Varan research teams, making sure that cultural differences did not interfere with their joint scientific projects. The Virans were an ancient species far more advanced than humans in many ways, but they had requested this partnership because humans brought a unique perspective to problem solving that even their sophisticated minds found valuable. As Tom entered the main research lab, he spotted his assigned partner immediately. Kira stood near the central holographic display, her tall, graceful form moving with the fluid precision that all Varans seemed to possess naturally. Her silver-scaled skin caught the soft lighting of the lab, creating patterns that shifted and flowed as she moved. The luminescent markings along her neck and arms pulsed in slow, steady rhythms that Tom had learned indicated deep concentration. Tom had been working with Kira for 3 weeks now, and every day proved more challenging than the last. Not because of the work itself, which involved studying quantum resonance patterns in crystalline structures, but because Tom found himself increasingly distracted by his Varan colleague. The Varans were known throughout the galaxy for their ethereal beauty, but Kira seemed to embody everything that made her species so striking. Her large eyes shifted color from deep blue to violet depending on the light, and her movements carried an almost musical quality. Tom had tried to maintain professional focus, but he was fighting a losing battle against his own fascination. "Good morning, Tom," Kira said without turning around. Her voice carried the melodic quality that all Varans possessed, but there was something uniquely warm about the way she spoke. "I have been reviewing the data from yesterday's experiments. There are some interesting patterns emerging." Tom set down his tablet and joined her at the holographic display. The three-dimensional projection showed a complex lattice structure, rotating slowly in the air between them. Points of light indicated areas where quantum energy accumulated and dispersed in ways that defied conventional physics. "What kind of patterns?" Tom asked, forcing himself to focus on the scientific data rather than the way Kira's markings brightened when she became excited about her research. "Look here." Kira pointed to a section of the lattice where several energy nodes clustered together. "The resonance frequency increases exponentially when we introduce the human-designed amplification protocol. But when we use the traditional Varan methods, the effect remains linear." Tom studied the data carefully. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough their joint research was supposed to achieve. Human intuitive approaches combined, with Varan analytical precision often produced results that neither species could accomplish alone. That suggests our random variable approaches, actually finding optimal pathways, that your mathematical models miss, Tom said, leaning closer to examine the energy patterns. "It's like the difference between following a map and just wandering until you find something interesting." Kira turned to look at him, and Tom suddenly realized how close they were standing. Her violet eyes seemed to sparkle with genuine interest. That is a fascinating way to describe it. Humans truly do approach problems from directions we would never consider. As the morning progressed, more team members arrived in the lab. Dr. Shan, the senior Viren researcher, glided over to review their progress. Behind him came 2 other Varans whose names Tom was still learning to pronounce correctly, along with Marcus, another human liaison who worked on a different project. The lab filled with quiet conversation as various teams shared their findings from the previous day's work. Tom noticed that the Varans tended to communicate as much through subtle body language and the changing patterns of their luminescent markings as they did through spoken words. He had been studying their non-verbal cues for months, but he still felt like he was missing half of every conversation. Kira moved to prepare for their scheduled presentation to the Joint Research Council. She activated several displays around the lab, each one showing different aspects of their quantum resonance research. As she worked, her concentration deepened, and the markings along her arms began to pulse in a faster, more complex rhythm. Tom found himself watching her work with growing admiration. Kira possessed a brilliant mind that could process theoretical concepts at speeds that amazed even her fellow Varans. But more than that, she approached each problem with a genuine curiosity that reminded Tom why he had become interested in science in the first place. "Tom, could you review the summary data while I prepare the presentation parameters?" Kira asked, gesturing toward one of the smaller displays. "Of course," Tom replied, moving to the indicated workstation. But as he began to review the information, he kept glancing back at Kira. She moved with such natural grace that even routine tasks looked like some kind of elegant performance. The morning sunlight from the station's artificial day cycle created a soft glow around her silver skin. Her long, delicate fingers moved across the control interfaces with practiced precision. When she encountered a particularly complex calculation, she would tilt her head slightly to one side, causing her luminescent markings to create new patterns that Tom was beginning to recognize as signs of deep thought. Tom realized he was staring, and quickly turned back to his own work. He needed to maintain professionalism, especially with other team members present. But every time Kira spoke or moved within his peripheral vision, his attention drifted away from the quantum resonance data. The truth was that Tom had never encountered anyone quite like Kira before. In his previous assignments, he had worked with Varans who maintained the formal distance that their culture typically preferred when dealing with other species. Kira, however, seemed genuinely interested in understanding human perspectives and often asked questions about Earth culture and human ways of thinking. During their lunch break the previous week, she had asked Tom to explain human concepts of humor, admitting that Varan entertainment focused more on intellectual puzzles than emotional responses. Tom had tried to tell her some jokes, most of which she found confusing, but her genuine effort to understand had been endearing. As Tom reviewed the data summaries, he found himself thinking about that conversation. Kira had laughed at one of his stories about a mishap during his training academy days, and the sound had been unlike anything he had ever heard. Varan laughter was rare and musical, like wind chimes made of crystal. "The quantum displacement readings are ready for integration," announced Dr. Shan, breaking Tom's distracted thoughts. "We should begin the formal presentation preparation." The team gathered around the central holographic display as Kira began to outline their findings. She spoke clearly and methodically, explaining how their combined research approach had led to significant breakthroughs in understanding quantum resonance behavior in crystalline matrices. Tom watched her present their work with obvious expertise and confidence. She had a gift for making complex scientific concepts accessible without oversimplifying them. Her markings shifted to warmer colors as she became more enthusiastic about particular aspects of their discoveries. The human approach of introducing controlled randomness into our experimental protocols has produced results that exceed our theoretical predictions by 37%, Kira continued. This suggests that intuitive problem-solving may access solution pathways that pure logical analysis cannot identify. As she spoke, Tom found his attention splitting between the scientific content and his growing admiration for Kira herself. She embodied everything he respected about the scientific method: curiosity, precision, and the willingness to consider new approaches. But beyond that, she possessed a warmth and openness that seemed unusual among Varans. The presentation continued for another 20 minutes, with various team members asking questions and offering suggestions. Tom contributed several observations about the practical applications of their findings, but part of his mind remained focused on watching Kira respond to each question with thoughtful consideration. When the formal presentation concluded, the team began preparing for the afternoon's experimental session. Tom gathered his notes and equipment while Kira made final adjustments to the quantum resonance chamber they would be using. "Tom, would you assist me with the calibration sequence?" Kira asked, gesturing toward the complex array of instruments surrounding the experimental chamber. "Absolutely," Tom replied, moving to join her at the control station. The calibration process required precise timing and coordination between multiple systems, making it one of the few tasks that genuinely required two people working in perfect synchronization. As they worked together, Tom became acutely aware of how naturally they had learned to coordinate their efforts. Kira would begin adjusting one parameter while Tom simultaneously modified related settings, creating a smooth workflow that maximized efficiency. They had developed this rhythm over their weeks of collaboration, but Tom was only now realizing how remarkable it was. Quantum field alignment is at optimal levels, Kira reported, checking the readings on her display. Resonance amplifiers are synchronized and ready, Tom confirmed, watching his own set of indicators. They continued the calibration process in comfortable silence, each anticipating what the other needed without having to ask. Tom found himself noticing small details about how Kira worked, the way she always double-checked critical measurements, the soft humming sound she made when concentrating, the graceful efficiency of her movements around the laboratory equipment. When the calibration was complete, they both stepped back to review their work. The quantum resonance chamber hummed quietly, all systems showing green indicators that confirmed everything was functioning perfectly. "Excellent work," Kira said, turning to smile at Tom. "Our partnership continues to exceed expectations." Tom felt a warm flush of pride at her compliment, but it was immediately followed by something more complex. As Kira stood there smiling at him, the soft laboratory lighting creating a subtle glow around her silver skin and causing her markings to pulse gently, Tom was struck by a sudden, overwhelming realization of just how beautiful she was. It was not just her physical appearance, though that was certainly striking enough. It was the intelligence in her violet eyes, the graceful confidence in her movements, the genuine warmth in her voice when she spoke to him. It was the way she approached every problem with curiosity and determination, and the way she seemed to find human perspectives genuinely fascinating rather than simply tolerable. Tom stared at her for a moment, completely captivated by the complete picture she presented. In that instant, all of his carefully maintained professional distance crumbled, replaced by a rush of honest admiration that left him temporarily speechless. How can someone be so beautiful it actually hurts to look at them? The words escaped Tom's lips before he could stop them, spoken in a quiet murmur that he thought only he could hear. The moment the words left his mouth, Tom felt his blood turn to ice. The laboratory fell completely silent. Every conversation stopped. Every piece of equipment seemed to pause in its humming. Even the air circulation system seemed to quiet down. Tom realized with growing horror that he had forgotten about the Viren's superior hearing. What he had intended as a private thought, barely whispered, had been clearly audible to every Viran in the laboratory. Kira's large eyes widened in surprise, her luminescent markings shifting to colors Tom had never seen before. Dr. Shan turned to look at them with an expression that seemed both shocked and curious. The other Virans in the lab had all stopped their work and were staring in Tom's direction. Tom felt his face begin to burn with embarrassment. His cheeks turned bright red as he realized that his accidental confession had been heard by not just Kira, but by the entire research team. He opened his mouth to stammer an apology, but no words came out. "I am so sorry," Tom finally managed to say, his voice cracking with embarrassment. "I did not mean to say that out loud. I was just thinking and the words just came out and I—"
"No, that was completely inappropriate and unprofessional, and I should—"
"Never have said anything like that in a work environment, or at all really, and I hope you can forgive me for being so thoughtless and stupid." Tom was rambling now, the words tumbling out as he tried desperately to apologize for his mistake. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the laboratory watching him, and he wanted nothing more than to disappear into the floor. But then, something unexpected happened. Kira began to laugh. It started as a small sound, almost like a musical sigh, but then it grew into full, genuine laughter that filled the laboratory with its crystal-clear melody. Her markings shifted to warm, golden colors that pulsed in rhythm with her amusement. Tom stopped his rambling apology and stared at her in complete confusion. This was not the reaction he had expected at all. Kira's laughter continued to fill the laboratory, and Tom felt his confusion growing deeper with each passing second. He had expected anger, embarrassment, or at the very least some kind of formal reprimand for his inappropriate comment. Instead, the Viran scientist seemed genuinely delighted by his accidental confession. The other Virans in the laboratory began to exchange glances that Tom could not interpret. Their luminescent markings shifted through various color patterns that clearly conveyed meaning among themselves, but Tom had not learned enough about Viran nonverbal communication to understand what they were expressing. Dr. Sean approached them with what appeared to be curiosity rather than disapproval. His tall frame moved with the same fluid grace that all Virans possessed, but there was something different in his posture that suggested he was observing an interesting phenomenon rather than witnessing a workplace incident. "Fascinating," Dr. Sean said quietly, his melodic voice carrying a note of genuine scientific interest. "Kira, would you care to explain your reaction to our human colleague?" Kira's laughter gradually subsided, but her markings continued to glow with warm golden colors. She looked at Tom with an expression that combined amusement, warmth, and something else that he could not quite identify. "Tom," Kira said, her voice still carrying traces of her musical laughter, "do you understand what you have just done?" Tom felt his face burning with continued embarrassment. "I made a completely inappropriate comment about your appearance in front of the entire research team," he said miserably. "I violated professional boundaries and probably several diplomatic protocols as well." "No," Kira said gently, shaking her head. "That is not what you did at all." She moved closer to Tom, her violet eyes bright with an emotion he had never seen from a Viran before. The other team members gathered around them, but their expressions seemed more curious than judgmental. "In Viran culture," Kira began, "we communicate through carefully chosen words, subtle telepathic impressions, and complex social protocols that have been refined over thousands of years. When we express appreciation for someone, we do so through elaborate ceremonies and formal declarations that follow precise traditional patterns." Tom listened carefully, trying to understand where this explanation was leading. He was still mortified by his slip, but Kira's calm, educational tone was helping to reduce his panic. "What you just did," Kira continued, "was something that Virans struggled to achieve even after centuries of practice. You expressed a genuine, unfiltered emotional response without any calculation or social positioning. You simply spoke the truth that was in your mind at that moment." "But that is exactly why it was inappropriate," Tom protested. "I should have controlled myself better." Kira's markings shifted to even warmer colors, and she smiled in a way that transformed her entire face. "Tom, do you know why I requested you specifically as my research partner?" Tom shook his head, still feeling confused by the direction of this conversation. "Because I have been studying human emotional expression for over a year," Kira explained. "I requested access to human research partners because I wanted to understand how your species forms such strong personal bonds and achieve such remarkable collaborative breakthroughs." Dr. Sean stepped forward, his own markings shifting to colors that Tom was beginning to recognize as indicating approval or agreement. "The human capacity for authentic emotional expression has been a subject of great interest among our scientific community," he said. "We have observed that human research teams often achieve results that exceed their theoretical capabilities, and we believe this is connected to their direct communication style." Tom felt his understanding of the situation beginning to shift. "You mean you are not offended by what I said?" "Quite the opposite," Kira replied. "What you just demonstrated is something that we find both remarkable and valuable. You expressed genuine appreciation in its purest form, without any of the social filtering that most species apply to their interactions." Marcus, the other human liaison, stepped closer to the group. Tom had forgotten that his colleague had witnessed the entire exchange. "Tom, remember our orientation briefings about cross-cultural communication patterns?" Marcus said. "The instructors mentioned that different species value different aspects of interaction." Tom nodded slowly, trying to recall the details of those sessions. There had been so much information about various alien cultures that some of the specifics had become blurred in his memory. "Virans prize authenticity above almost all other virtues," Marcus continued. "What you just did was probably the most genuine compliment any of them have ever received from a human." Kira's markings brightened even further. "Exactly. In our culture, we spend so much energy crafting perfect expressions of appreciation that we sometimes lose the emotional core that makes appreciation meaningful. Your words carried no calculation, no social strategy, no hidden agenda. They were simply true." Tom felt his embarrassment beginning to transform into something else entirely. "So you are not angry with me?" "I am honored," Kira said simply, "and I am grateful that you trusted me enough to reveal such an honest response." The other Virans in the laboratory began to disperse back to their workstations, but Tom noticed that their markings remained bright and their movements seemed more relaxed than usual. Dr. Shan lingered for a moment longer. "Tom," the senior researcher said, "your comment has actually provided us with valuable data about human emotional expression patterns. Would you be willing to participate in some additional cultural exchange sessions? We are very interested in understanding how humans maintain authenticity in their communications." Tom looked around the laboratory, still processing the unexpected turn of events. "You want to study how humans express emotions?" "We want to learn from it," Kira corrected gently. "Your species has achieved remarkable success in collaborative endeavors, and we believe your direct communication style is a significant factor in that success." As the immediate crisis of his social blunder faded, Tom began to see the situation from a broader perspective. Throughout his months on the station, he had been trying to learn Viran communication protocols and adapt his behavior to match their formal interaction patterns. He had assumed that his natural human tendencies were something to be suppressed in order to work effectively with the more sophisticated alien species. "I have been trying so hard to communicate like a Viran," Tom said slowly, "but you actually value the ways that humans communicate differently." "Precisely," Dr. Shan confirmed. "We invited human participation in our research programs, not because we wanted you to become more like us, but because we wanted to benefit from your unique perspectives and approaches." Kira moved to the central display and activated a new data set that Tom had not seen before. The holographic projection showed communication pattern analyses from various multi-species research teams. "Look at these collaboration efficiency ratings," Kira said, pointing to different sections of the data. "Teams that include humans consistently outperform monospecies groups, even when the other species have superior individual capabilities in the relevant fields." Tom studied the data with growing fascination. The human-inclusive teams showed higher innovation rates, faster problem-solving times, and more breakthrough discoveries than teams composed entirely of more advanced species. "We have been trying to understand this phenomenon for years," Kira continued. "Our analysis suggests that human emotional directness creates a collaborative environment that allows all team members to perform at higher levels." "How does that work?" Tom asked, genuinely curious now. "When humans express authentic emotions and reactions," Dr. Shan explained, "it creates what we call an authenticity field. Other species find themselves responding more naturally and taking more creative risks because the social environment feels safer for genuine expression." Tom thought about his experiences on the station over the past 6 months. He had noticed that Viran team members seemed more relaxed and open during sessions when humans were present, but he had attributed that to their natural politeness rather than any specific effect of human behavior. "So when I accidentally blurted out my thoughts about Kira," Tom said, "working through the implications, I was actually demonstrating something that you consider valuable rather than inappropriate." "Exactly," Kira confirmed. "And your immediate embarrassment and genuine apology demonstrated another human trait that we find remarkable. You showed authentic concern for my feelings and genuine regret for potentially causing offense. Most species would have either defended their behavior or tried to minimize the incident." Tom felt a strange sense of relief washing over him. Not only was he not in trouble for his comment, but apparently he had inadvertently provided an example of the very qualities that made humans valuable partners in interspecies collaboration. "There is something else," Kira said, and her marking shifted to softer, more personal colors. "I need to confess something to you as well." Tom waited, curious about what she might reveal. "I did not request you as a research partner solely for scientific purposes," Kira admitted. "I have been fascinated by human culture and behavior since our first contact with your species. When I read your personnel file and research background, I was impressed by your work. But when I saw the behavioral assessment notes that described your authentic and direct communication style, I specifically asked for you because I wanted to experience that authenticity firsthand." Tom felt his cheeks warming again, but this time it was not from embarrassment. "You chose me because you wanted to work with someone who might accidentally say inappropriate things." Kira laughed again, that same musical sound that had surprised everyone earlier. "I chose you because I wanted to work with someone who would say true things even when they were unexpected." The afternoon experimental session proceeded more smoothly than any Tom could remember. The entire dynamic in the laboratory seemed different now. The Viran team members were more talkative and asked more questions. They seemed genuinely interested in Tom's opinions and reactions, rather than simply tolerating his presence as a diplomatic necessity. During a break between experimental runs, Kira approached Tom at his workstation. "I have a personal question, if you do not mind." "Of course," Tom replied. "What made you say what you said earlier?" "I am curious about the human thought process that led to that moment." Tom considered the question carefully. "I was watching you work and thinking about how remarkable you are. Not just your appearance, but everything about you. Your intelligence, your curiosity, the way you approach problems, the way you treat everyone with respect and kindness. It all came together in that moment, and I was just overwhelmed by how amazing you are as a person." Kira's markings shifted through a complex pattern of colors that Tom had never seen before. "That is exactly what I mean about human authenticity," she said softly. "You just described a complete emotional and intellectual assessment in simple, direct terms. A Viran would require several hours and formal protocols to express the same appreciation. Is that good or bad?" Tom asked. "It is wonderful," Kira replied. "It is one of the reasons I find humans so fascinating." As the day continued, Tom found himself relaxing into a more natural communication style with the entire team. Instead of carefully moderating his responses to match Viran formality, he began expressing his thoughts and reactions more directly. The effect was immediately noticeable. The Virans seemed more engaged, more creative in their suggestions, and more willing to propose unconventional approaches to their research challenges. By the end of the day, they had made more progress on their quantum resonance project than they had in the previous week combined. As the team prepared to leave the laboratory, Kira lingered behind with Tom. "I want to thank you for today," she said. "I should be thanking you," Tom replied. "You turned what could have been a disaster into a learning experience. You gave me something I have been seeking for a long time," Kira said. "You showed me what authentic appreciation looks like. In Viran culture, we express such feelings through complex rituals that often lose the emotional core that makes them meaningful. Your direct honesty reminded me why appreciation matters in the first place." Tom felt a warm sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with their scientific achievements. "So what happens now?" "Now we continue our research partnership," Kira said with a smile. "But perhaps with a better understanding of what makes it work so well." As they walked together toward the station's residential quarters, Tom realized that his accidental confession had led to something much more valuable than embarrassment. It had opened a door to genuine cross-cultural understanding, and shown him that his natural human traits were not weaknesses to be hidden, but strengths to be shared. The next morning, Tom received a message from the station commander requesting his participation in a new cultural exchange program designed to help other species understand and benefit from human communication patterns. Apparently, word of the previous day's breakthrough had spread throughout the station's leadership. Tom smiled as he read the message. His biggest mistake had somehow become his greatest contribution to interspecies cooperation. He was beginning to understand that being authentically human was not something to apologize for, but something to embrace and share with the galaxy.